This will be the coolest tank I've ever made. This is Pandora, my giant cloud rainforest vivarium. And this is Arcadia, the rainforest treetops. Both these giant vivariums are connected and host a plethora of exotic life. But these rainforest creatures have no idea a brand new world, an expansion pack, is about to be added to their home. For I am working on a third ambitious vivarium of epic proportions. A giant tropical wetlands kingdom set to be the coolest chunk of biological space. And my plan is to connect it to Pandora when it's all done. So now, the tropical wetlands world building process begins. Please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon. Welcome to the AC fam. Enjoy. So after last week's crisis, when the newly built tank failed its first leak test, I contacted the tank building team, who've created large tanks and ponds in the past, and they believed that I didn't wait long enough for the silicone to cure. I had attempted the leak test a day too early, which, oops, my bad. I guess I got a little too excited. Regardless, just to be safe, the team still went in to reseal all the edges, just in case, and said I should wait 2 whole days before attempting the next leak test. Now I didn't know it yet, but building this giant Vivarium 3 was going to be quite the emotional adventure, to say the least. You guys will be stunned by how this all turned out, but also, later I have something important to ask all of you regarding the future of this new wetlands vivarium in the making. So stay tuned for that coming up. Now, despite the crisis control, I made the executive decision to start the building process of our tropical wetlands while the silicone was drying. As I do with all my vivarium builds, I visualize the look of the landscape before it's even built, by tracing my intended shape of the landscape as I saw it in my head with my hands. This stage, though odd-looking, has been super helpful for planning the overall shape of the tank during the building process, and ensures I don't just start building without a goal in mind. My vision for the tank was to create a general oval shape with wood forming a sort of arch over the water and wooden roots and soil below the water. I could see our future water world vivarium in my mind. Now, usually with these vivarium builds, I like to do everything myself, but this time I would need my team to help me construct. This vivarium was a whole new level of complex, and you'll see why soon. We would start in the morning to create what I hoped would be the most beautiful and visually stunning tank ever created on this channel.
Creator of worlds is gonna rock your world.
It was building day, and I knew it wasn't going to be easy. Today we would be creating what's called the Hardscape, which means the non-living components of the vivarium. We prepped all our materials. The first section we worked on was the right side of the tank, and a mat had to be placed beneath the decor to protect the glass. As always, largest pieces were placed in first. We used rocks to secure this massive piece of driftwood into place. Next, we needed to squirt aquascaping glue to attach the rocks to the driftwood, covering the drying point of attachment with cocoa fiber, as the glue usually becomes an unsightly patch of white once dried. Now here's the first reason why creating a water world is harder and more complicated than creating a terrarium. Let's look at Pandora for a second. A giant terrarium that I completed in just a week. All decor and ground media were added, plants planted, then creatures introduced, all in one fell swoop. But with aquatic setups, the presence of water adds a whole new complication to the mix. Because things will be submerged in water, it was imperative that all decor were extra secured, because there was a good chance it would move or float out of place if they weren't, due to buoyancy or currents. Unlike in terrariums, gravity was simply not enough. Now this stage of the building process is simply a game of Tetris. Keeping in mind the oval-shaped goal established during the visualization stage, driftwood pieces were carefully fitted together, again secured into place using rocks, glue, and cocoa fiber. We would be building 2 islands of driftwood on both ends of the tank to achieve the oval shape. We began the same process on the other side with our chosen driftwood pieces. It was a meticulous venture, but I knew the final result would be worth all the work. Eventually, we built the initial base of the right side, which would support the land area and form one half of the arch above the water. The left side was equally as promising. Godzilla, our resident caiman, watched the entire process like a hawk. We laid some pieces horizontally to begin forming land space to create the island shelf. We also used rocks to build on these islands. We tried creating various pockets where soil could be added for planting. Some final pieces were inserted into place, and after a whole day's work, this is what the initial driftwood structure looked like. AC family, behold! As I approached the tank, I was spellbound by how real the structures looked. They resembled giant dead trees, and you would never know they were a composition of many pieces of driftwood, all glued together with rocks. So AC family, what do you think? We still weren't done with the hardscape, but it already was starting to look incredible. We had more work ahead, but so far, this tank was clearly on track to be something spectacular. Little did I know, this tropical wetlands vivarium would, no pun intended, blow all my expectations out of the water. But also up ahead would be the ever nerve-wracking second water leak test. And that was something I prayed that this giant Vivarium 3 would not fail. It was day 2 of hardscaping, and we immediately went straight to work. Today, our goal was to build on the 2 islands to give them more horizontal space, and also to create a space for a little waterfall or stream. In nature, water worlds are usually fed by tributaries, streams, and rivers. So I felt our tropical water world absolutely needed a small waterfall and stream at one side. But to do that, we needed to give more structure to the islands by fixating plateau-like pieces of driftwood to create a shelf that would exist above the waterline. Decorative pieces positioned downward were added to the edges of the plateaus to look like roots, creating the illusion that these plateaus were naturally formed. And then, filler foam was added to certain areas to help create natural cups within the driftwood spaces that would properly hold soil for planting and to provide homes for burrowing creatures like ants. What? Did you think ants wouldn't be living in a wetlands vivarium? Knowing the chromatogasters and their tendency to dominate all spaces, especially places with wood, I have a feeling once this wetlands vivarium is finally connected to Pandora, more than one species of ant will find our wetlands vivarium a habitable place, and there will be a rush to claim the lush available real estate. In addition to the plateaus, we also added thinner branchy driftwood pieces to further create the illusion that the two giant islands were dead trees from the past. Through trial and error, we tested various spots for each branch for best visual effect. To further build our waterfall, we added more rocks, then placed tubes to set the spots where the water was going to emerge from. The idea was for the water to cascade peacefully down this ramp of driftwood. More filler foam and glue, more rocks, and soon our waterfall island had taken shape. The upper arch was also looking awesome. We added small lava rocks to fill in some spaces, more filler foam, and then came the addition of soil to fill the pockets of space. And then we were done. Now it looked so real. Let's have a look at the island with the waterfall. I just couldn't wait for water to come flowing through this channel. Though the island was still bare, I could already see how lush this area would look once planted. Some of the island extended outward, over the water. The other driftwood island was just as impressive. The grand arch, forming a bridge over to the other island, was a total dream. Now there was still a bit more hardscape to do, but this was as far as we could go because something important had to be conducted first before we could continue. Our giant Vivarium 3 had to pass the water leak test before we could proceed any further, and it was scheduled first thing in the morning. My heart was beating fast as we turned on the hose and water began to fill the vivarium. I prayed it would hold the water and not leak. Then, we shut the water off and checked to see if there was a leak. And to my surprise, there there was no leak. Our giant Vivarium 3 held the body of water within its glass, like a titan. The water was still and placid and felt so right in its place. It was truly one of the most beautiful sights I've ever seen, and the largest aquarium I've ever built in my life. I plugged in our waterfall and marveled at the sight of water cascading down the channel we built. What a dream it was to see! We can now add the final touches to our hardscape. And while we do that, it's time to ask you the question I mentioned at the start of the video. What should we name our new giant tropical wetlands vivarium? Leave your name suggestions in the comments, and be sure to like your favorite name suggestions that you see posted so that I see them. As for me, I like the name Hydromeda, reminiscent of the Andromeda Galaxy, which is on a crash course to collide with our galaxy, much like how this giant wetlands vivarium will one day connect to Pandora once it's done. Perhaps you guys have other cool names, so be sure to suggest and vote in the comments. As we completed our design, I couldn't believe that after all the months of planning, Vivarium 3, our new giant wetlands vivarium, was coming wonderfully into existence. Though aquarium building is much more gradual and complicated a process compared to building terrariums, and to be fair, there is still much more complexity in the stages ahead that I didn't get into yet, I assure you, the ultimate payoff when we finally see the end result will definitely be worth it. It's just one of those hobbies that remind me that some of the best things in life take time to build and grow. When we were all done, this was the final look. Insane! It was like a cryptic and haunted-looking forest, but oh, such a vibe. And now, AC family, comes the fun part. Let there be plants. Vote in my community tab to affect this story